I knew something was wrong the moment no one would meet their eyes. Not the lawyer, not the staff, not even their own children. I was standing just a few feet away when Evelyn Mercer tightened her grip on Harold Mercer's hand like it was the only thing still real in that room. 75 years of life had slowed their bodies, but not their awareness. They understood exactly what was happening, and that made it worse. The air felt controlled, like every word had already been practiced before they arrived. A long wooden table separated them from the people who were supposed to protect them. Their family, their blood, their reason to feel safe. Instead, those same people sat across from them with calm expressions, sliding papers forward as if this was just another routine decision. "It is time," one voice said. No emotion, no hesitation, just a decision already made. I noticed Harold glance down at the paper, then back at Evelyn. There was something silent passing between them. Not confusion, not panic, recognition. This was not right. Evelyn tried to speak. Her voice came out soft, but steady. "We never agreed to this." No one answered her. Instead, the lawyer adjusted the file and spoke in a tone that sounded clean and official. "The documents are already signed." That was the moment everything shifted. Because I saw it. Both of them looked down again, slower this time. Their names were there. Clear, perfect, undeniable. But their faces did not match those signatures. Harold's hand trembled slightly. Not from weakness, but from something deeper. He was trying to remember something. Something that did not fit. "I did not sign this," he said quietly. No one reacted. Not even a pause. One of their children leaned forward, voice calm, almost comforting in a way that felt rehearsed. "Dad, you did. You just do not remember." That sentence landed harder than anything else. Because it was not just a statement. It was a strategy. Turn doubt into weakness. Turn confusion into proof. Turn control into care. Evelyn's eyes shifted quickly, searching the room like she was trying to find one person who would question this. No one did. And that silence said more than words ever could. Then came the part that broke everything. They will be moved today. Not together. Separate care homes. Different locations. Different staff. Different lives. The explanation came fast, clean, and emotionless. "It is better for their condition." Condition. That word echoed in my head. Because just hours ago, they were walking side by side, speaking clearly, remembering everything. Now suddenly, they had a condition serious enough to justify separation? It did not make sense. And deep down, they knew it too. Evelyn's grip tightened again. This time, Harold held back just as firmly. Their hands locked together like they were refusing to let the world rewrite their story. "You cannot separate us," Evelyn said. Her voice did not shake this time. It carried something stronger. Fear mixed with defiance. For a brief second, no one spoke. And in that second, I thought maybe, just maybe, something would stop this. But it did not. A staff member stepped forward gently. Not aggressive, not forceful, just enough pressure to start loosening their hands. Harold resisted. Not violently, just enough to show he understood what letting go meant. And then it happened. The smallest moment. The one that no one else seemed to notice. Harold leaned closer to Evelyn, his voice barely audible. "This is not about care." Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. She already knew. But hearing it confirmed something deeper. This was planned. Carefully. Quietly. And they were already too far inside it. Within minutes, everything accelerated. Bags were packed. Personal belongings reduced to essentials. Phones taken for safety reasons. Every step wrapped in calm explanations that sounded reasonable on the surface. But underneath, something was deeply wrong. I watched as Harold was guided toward one exit, Evelyn toward another. Opposite directions. No discussion. No delay. Just movement. Controlled. Final. Evelyn turned once more, trying to see him. Harold did the same. Their eyes locked across the room. That was their goodbye. No words. No embrace. Just a look that carried decades of memories in a single second. And then they were gone. Two separate doors closed. Two separate futures forced into place. And just like that, their life together was divided. But the story did not end there. Because later that evening, something surfaced that was never meant to be seen. It was not dramatic. It was not obvious. It was just wrong. A document. Buried under other files. Easy to miss, but impossible to ignore once noticed. I picked it up slowly. At first glance, it looked identical to the one presented earlier. Same format. Same structure. Same signatures. But there was one detail that did not match. The date. It was off. Not by years. Not even by months. By just enough to raise a question no one wanted asked. And then I saw something else. A second signature. Faint. Almost erased. But still there. That was when the realization hit me. This was not a mistake. This was altered. Deliberately. Carefully. And if this document was changed, then what else had been? I looked back toward the now empty room. Everything felt too quiet. Too clean. Too finished. But it was not finished. Not even close. Because somewhere, in two different places, Evelyn and Harold Mercer were sitting alone, trying to understand how their entire life had been taken from them in a single day. And neither of them knew yet that this separation was only the beginning. Because what happened next was something no one in that room had planned for. I could not let that document go. It stayed in my mind long after the room emptied, long after the voices faded, long after Evelyn and Harold were taken in opposite directions like their lives had never been connected. Something about it refused to sit quietly. That date, that second signature, it was not just wrong. It was placed there with intention. I went back to the table where everything had happened. The chairs were still slightly out of place, like the room had not fully recovered from what it had witnessed. The file was still there, closed, neat, as if nothing questionable had ever touched it. I opened it again, slowly this time, carefully, page by page. Every document looked perfect at first glance. Legal language, clean formatting, official stamps, everything designed to make doubt feel unnecessary. But I was not looking for what was obvious anymore. I was looking for what did not belong. And then I saw it. A medical report, placed quietly between legal pages, like it was just another formality. But it was not. The diagnosis listed there did not match what I had seen earlier that day. It claimed cognitive decline, severe enough to justify immediate intervention, severe enough to remove decision-making rights, severe enough to separate them. But I had stood right in front of them. I had heard their voices. Clear, aware, present. That report was lying. And whoever placed it there knew exactly what they were doing. My hands tightened around the file as something colder started to form beneath the surface. This was not about care. This was control. I flipped to the next page. Power of attorney. Signed. Approved. Transferred. Everything legally structured to hand over full authority. Not temporary. Not limited. Complete. I checked the signature again. Harold Mercer. It looked perfect. Too perfect. The strokes were steady, consistent, almost mechanical. But I had seen his hand tremble earlier. Even holding onto Evelyn. There was no way he signed this with that level of control. No way. And that was when the realization hit harder than before. These papers were not just misleading. They were built, constructed piece by piece to create one outcome. Separation, isolation, and silence. A quiet sound behind me broke my focus. I turned. One of the staff members was standing near the doorway, watching, not surprised, not confused, just watching. You should not be going through those, they said. The tone was calm, but there was something underneath it. Not authority, not concern, pressure. I closed the file halfway, but did not step away. Something here does not add up, I said. They did not respond immediately. Instead, they walked closer, slow and measured. Everything has already been approved, they replied. That sentence again. Clean. Final. Designed to end questions. But it did the opposite. It confirmed them. Approved does not mean correct, I said. For the first time, there was a pause. Small, but real. Their expression shifted slightly. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. You should let the family handle this, they added. The family. The same people who had not looked Evelyn in the eyes. The same people who spoke like this was already over. No, this was not something to hand back to them. Not anymore. I stepped back from the table, but I did not leave. Where were these documents signed? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. They were processed through proper channels, came the reply. That was not an answer. That was avoidance. And it told me everything I needed to know. Because if the process was clean, the answer would have been simple. Clear. Direct. This was neither. I picked up the medical report again. This doctor, I said, pointing at the name. Where is their clinic? No response. Just silence. And in that silence, something shifted again. Not in the room. Inside me. Because I understood now. This was bigger than one document. Bigger than one decision. This was layered. Carefully structured so that every piece supported the next. medical justification, legal authority, family approval, each one reinforcing the other until no one questioned it, until no one looked deeper, until people like Evelyn and Harold had no voice left. But someone had made a mistake, a small one. That date, that second signature, it should not have been there. And now that I had seen it, I could not unsee it. I closed the file completely this time, but I did not put it back. Not yet, because there was one more thing I needed to check. At the very back of the folder, there was a thin sheet, almost hidden behind the rest. I pulled it out carefully. It was a transfer record. Financial, detailed, precise. And that was where everything changed. Large amounts, moved quietly, shifted between accounts. All within the same time frame the documents were signed. The same time Evelyn and Harold supposedly agreed to give up control. This was not about care. This was about money. And suddenly, everything made sense. The urgency, the separation, the silence. If they stayed together, they could question it. If they were isolated, they could be controlled. I felt a chill move through me as I looked at the final line on that sheet. Authorized by family representative. No names written clearly. Just initials. Deliberately unclear. Deliberately hidden. Whoever did this did not want to be traced easily. And that meant one thing. They knew it was wrong. A noise echoed down the hallway. Footsteps. More than one person. Coming closer. I slid the paper back into the file quickly, closing it just as the door opened again. 2 people entered this time. One of them I recognized. One of the children. Their expression was calm. But their eyes went straight to the file in my hands. Too fast. Too focused. You are still here, they said. Not a question. A statement. I nodded slightly, keeping my tone neutral. There are some inconsistencies, I replied. The word hung between us. Inconsistencies. Not accusations. Not yet. But close enough. They smiled. Soft. Controlled. But it did not reach their eyes. Everything has been handled, they said. Again. That same phrase. Repeated like a shield. But now I could see through it. And I think they realized that. Because for the first time, there was something different in the air. Not calm. Not control. Tension. Real tension. The kind that only shows up when something hidden is at risk of being exposed. They stepped closer. Just enough to lower their voice. You should not get involved in things you do not understand. There it was. Not concern. Not advice. A warning. Clear. Direct. And completely unmasked. I held their gaze for a moment longer than expected. Just long enough to let them know. I understood more than they thought. And I was not stepping away. Not now. Not after what I had seen. Because somewhere, in 2 separate places, Evelyn and Harold Mercer were sitting alone. Cut off. Confused. And completely unaware. That the truth behind their separation was far more dangerous than being apart. And what none of us realized yet was that this was only the beginning of something much darker. Because the next move had already been set in motion. The silence inside those places was not normal. It was controlled. I realized that the moment I stepped into the first care home where Evelyn Mercer had been taken, everything looked perfect on the surface. Clean floors, soft lighting, polite staff. The kind of place families point to and say, they will be safe here. But safety was not what I felt. What I felt was restriction. Evelyn was sitting near a window when I saw her. Still. Too still. Not because she was weak. Because she was thinking. Her eyes moved slowly toward me. And in that single glance, I knew something had already changed. She was alert. More alert than anyone expected her to be. You came, she said quietly. Not surprised. Almost like she had been waiting. I sat across from her, careful not to draw attention. They told me you needed rest, I said. A faint expression crossed her face. Not a smile. Something sharper. They tell me a lot of things, she replied. There was no confusion in her voice. No fading memory. That medical report was already falling apart. I leaned slightly closer. Do you remember signing anything? I asked. She did not answer immediately. Instead, her eyes shifted toward the hallway. Watching. Measuring. Then back to me. They asked me to sign a paper weeks ago, she said. Her voice dropped lower. They said it was for insurance. That was it. The first crack. Weeks ago. Not yesterday. Not during that meeting. Everything had been prepared in advance. What happened after that? I asked. Her fingers tightened slightly against the armrest. They stopped letting me handle anything, she said. Calls. Letters. Even simple things. I felt something tighten in my chest. Because that matched the documents. Step by step. Control. Isolation. Transfer of power. They said it was easier for me, she added. Easier. That word again. Always wrapped in care. Always hiding something else. Before I could ask more, a staff member appeared at the end of the hallway. Watching. Not approaching. Just watching. Evelyn noticed it too. Her tone shifted instantly. They take good care of me, she said, louder this time. Rehearsed. Careful. A message hidden inside the words. Do not push right now. I understood. And that was when she did something unexpected. She reached for a small book beside her. Old. Worn. Something personal. She placed it gently on the table between us. You should read this later, she said. Her eyes held mine for just a second longer than necessary. That was not a suggestion. It was instruction. I nodded slightly and picked it up without drawing attention. The staff member stepped closer now. Too close. Visiting time is limited, they said. Polite. Controlled. But firm. I stood slowly. I will come back, I said. Evelyn did not respond. But her eyes did. And they said everything. Do not wait too long. I left that building with more questions than answers. But I did not go far. Because Harold Mercer was in another facility across town. And something told me his situation would not be any better. The second place felt different the moment I entered. Not softer. Stricter. Less warmth. More rules. Harold was not by a window. He was in a smaller room. Door half closed. Like someone had decided how much of the world he was allowed to see. He looked up when I stepped inside. And unlike Evelyn, his reaction was immediate. You saw her, he asked. No greeting. No hesitation. Straight to the point. Yes, I said. A slow breath left him. Relief. But mixed with something heavier. They will not let me call her, he said. I asked every day. That confirmed it. This was not accidental separation. This was enforced silence. I moved closer. They said it was for your condition, I told him. His eyes sharpened instantly. My condition, he repeated. There was anger there. Real anger. They said I forget things, he added. Then he leaned forward slightly. But I remember everything that matters. That line stayed with me. Because it was true. He remembered enough to know something was wrong. And that was exactly why they needed him isolated. Do you remember signing the documents? I asked. His jaw tightened. No, he said. Not unsure. Not hesitant. Clear. Certain. No. That single word carried more weight than any legal file I had seen. Because it was truth without confusion. Before I could respond, he lowered his voice. They are watching everything, he said. His eyes shifted slightly toward the corner of the room. There was nothing obvious there. No camera visible. But the way he said it made it real. They do not want us talking, he continued. And they definitely do not want us comparing notes. That was it. That was the missing piece. Separate them. Control information. Prevent connection. If they never spoke again, the truth would never fully form. I felt the pattern. Locking into place. Every step. Every decision. Every lie. But then Harold said something that changed everything again. There was a call, he said. My attention snapped back. What call? He hesitated. Just for a second. Then spoke carefully. Before they moved us, he said. I heard them arguing. About money. There it was again. The same thread. Running through everything. How much? I asked. He shook his head slightly. I did not hear the amount, he said. But I heard one thing clearly. He leaned closer. And his voice dropped to almost nothing. If this goes wrong, we lose everything. A cold silence filled the room. Because that sentence did not sound like concern for their parents. It sounded like fear of getting caught. Before I could ask anything else, footsteps approached outside. Closer. Faster this time. Harold leaned back instantly. His expression changed. Calm. Neutral. Like nothing had been said. The door opened. A staff member stepped in. Time is up, they said. No softness this time. Just instruction. I stood slowly, my mind racing. 2 places. 2 stories. Perfectly aligned. Too aligned to be coincidence. I looked at Harold one last time. I will fix this, I said quietly. He held my gaze. Not hopeful. Not desperate. Certain. Do it fast, he replied. I stepped out into the hallway, but something felt different now. Heavier. More urgent. Because this was no longer just about documents. Or signatures. Or even money. This was about time. Because every hour they stayed separated, the system around them grew stronger. More solid. Harder to break. And as I reached my car, I remembered the book Evelyn had given me. Still in my hand. Still unopened. I sat down and opened it slowly. At first, it looked ordinary. Pages filled with handwritten notes, dates, memories, nothing unusual, until I reached the middle. There, pressed between two pages, was a folded piece of paper. Hidden carefully, deliberately. I unfolded it, and the moment I read the first line, everything changed again. Because it was not a memory, it was a message, and it was written before any of this happened. Which meant one thing. Evelyn Mercer knew something was coming long before anyone tried to separate them. And whatever she knew was about to expose everything. My hands did not move for a few seconds after I opened that paper, because the first line did not look like something written in fear. It looked like preparation. If you are reading this, then they have already started. I read it again, slower this time. Every word felt deliberate, measured, like Evelyn Mercer had chosen each line knowing she might not get another chance. This was not written in panic. This was written in clarity, and that changed everything. I shifted slightly in my seat, locking the car doors without even realizing it. The world outside suddenly felt less relevant than what I was holding. The next line hit harder. They will say it is about our health. It is not. That confirmed what I already suspected. But then came the part one was not ready for. They tried once before. I felt a chill move through me. Once before? This was not the beginning. This was a second attempt. And somehow, they had failed the first time. Which meant Evelyn and Harold had seen something back then. Something serious enough to write this message in advance. I kept reading. They needed access. Not just to us, but to everything tied to us. Access. That word connected directly to the financial records. The transfers. The hidden authorizations. This was planned for a long time. Not rushed. Not emotional. Calculated. Carefully built over time. My grip tightened slightly as I continued. We refused them. There it was. The reason. Simple. Clear. They said no. And that was enough to turn family into something else. Something colder. Something dangerous. A car passed by outside, its headlights briefly cutting through the darkness. I barely noticed, because the next line shifted the ground under me again. They began changing things after that. Changing things. I thought back to the documents. The altered date. The second signature. The medical report that did not match reality. This was not random. This was step-by-step control. And Evelyn had seen it happening. They started with small lies. The note continued. Then they made those lies official. That sentence stayed with me, because that is exactly what had happened. Take something false, wrap it in paperwork, stamp it, approve it, repeat it until no one questions it, until it becomes truth on paper, even if it never was in reality. I turned the page slightly. There was more. They will try to separate us. I exhaled slowly. She knew. Before it happened. Before the meeting. Before the documents. She knew separation was part of the plan. And still, she had not been able to stop it. Which meant one thing. They had underestimated how far this would go. Or worse. They had trusted someone they should not have. The next lines were written darker, the pen pressed harder into the page. If we are separated, they will control the story. That was exactly what was happening now. 2 locations. No communication. No shared truth. Each one isolated with only the version given to them. I felt a rising urgency in my chest. Because this note was not just explaining the past. It was warning about the present. And then I reached the part that made everything even more dangerous. There is proof. I froze. Proof. Not suspicion. Not fear. Evidence. Real. Existing. Hidden somewhere. I read faster now. We kept records. My heart started beating harder. Records of what? Financial movements? Conversations? Something bigger? Something strong enough to break everything open? They do not know where it is. That line changed the entire situation. Because if the family had already taken control of accounts, documents, legal authority, but still did not have this proof, then they were not finished. They were still searching. And that meant Evelyn and Harold were not just victims. They were targets. Active ones. The final lines were shorter. Sharper. Like time had run out while writing them. If anything happens, do not trust what they show you. Find what we hid. The note ended there. No location. No instructions. Just that. Find it. I leaned back in the seat slowly, the paper still in my hands. This was no longer just about fixing a wrong decision. This was about uncovering something that had been buried deliberately, something valuable enough to build an entire plan around. Something dangerous enough to justify everything they had done. Separation, isolation, control, legal manipulation, financial movement. All of it pointing toward one thing. They were trying to erase something before it could be used against them. And they had not found it yet. That gave us one advantage. One small window. But windows close fast. I folded the paper carefully and placed it back inside the book. Not in the same position. Not obvious. If someone searched it, I did not want them finding it easily. Then I stepped out of the car. The night felt heavier now. Quieter. Like everything around me knew something I had just learned. I needed to move fast. But I also needed to move carefully. Because if they were willing to go this far already, there was no limit to what they might do next. As I reached the sidewalk, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I stared at it for a second before answering. Hello. Silence. Just breathing on the other end. Then a voice. Low. Controlled. You have been asking too many questions. Every part of me went still. Who is this? I asked. A slight pause. Then, you should stop. Not aggressive. Not loud. But absolute. Like a line had just been drawn. I glanced around instinctively. The street looked empty. But it did not feel empty anymore. You are making a mistake, the voice continued. This does not concern you. I felt something shift inside me. Not fear. Something sharper. Because now it was clear. They knew. They knew someone was looking deeper. And they were reacting. That meant pressure. Which meant risk. Which also meant I was getting close to something real. You separated them, I said. No hesitation. No soft tone. You forged documents. Another pause. Longer this time. And then the line went dead. No goodbye. No denial. Just silence. But that silence said more than anything else. They did not deny it. Because they could not. I lowered the phone slowly, my mind racing. This was no longer hidden. Not for them. And not for me. The next move would matter more than everything so far. Because now, this was not just about uncovering the truth. This was about staying ahead of people who were already trying to control it. I took a deep breath and looked down at the book in my hand again. Somewhere, inside everything Evelyn and Harold had built over the years, there was something hidden. Something powerful enough to expose all of this. And now I had to find it. Before they did. Because if they reached it first, then everything Evelyn warned about would not just happen. It would be permanent. And far worse than separation. Because the next step would not be control. It would be erasure. I did not sleep that night. Not even for a minute. Because every piece was starting to connect, and the picture forming in my head was far worse than I expected. This was not just about taking control of two elderly people. This was about taking control of everything they had built, and making sure no one could ever take it back. And now there was proof hidden somewhere. Proof that could destroy everything the family had carefully constructed. But there was a problem. I had no idea where to start looking. Until I remembered something small. Something almost forgettable. Inside the book, between the handwritten notes, there were dates. Not random. Not casual. Repeated. Specific. Marked in a way that did not match normal journaling. At the time, I ignored it. Now it felt like a map. Underscore. The next morning, I went back to Evelyn's care home. Not through the front entrance. This time, I paid attention to how people moved. Who watched. Who ignored. And who pretended not to notice. Patterns reveal more than conversations. Evelyn was not in the same spot. That was the first thing that felt wrong. I scanned the room once. Twice. Nothing. A staff member approached almost immediately. Too quickly. Like they were expecting someone to ask. She is resting today, they said. No hesitation. Prepared answer. Can I see her? I asked. A slight pause. Then, doctor's instructions. That was enough. They were limiting access now. Which meant one thing. Something had changed overnight. And it was not in our favor. I nodded slowly and stepped back, acting like I accepted it. But I did not leave. Instead, I sat in the waiting area, watching. Minutes passed. Then more. And then I saw it. Two staff members talking quietly near the hallway. One of them said something that changed everything. They moved her early this morning. Moved. My focus sharpened instantly. This was not part of any normal process. Transfers take time. Documentation. Approval. Notification. None of that had reached me. Which meant this was not official. This was reactive. They were moving her because of me. Because I had started asking questions. Because they were losing control. I stood up immediately and walked toward them. Where did you move her? I asked. Both of them froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. That information is not available, one of them replied. Not available. Not restricted. Not confidential. Not available. That was not a rule. That was avoidance. You moved her without notice, I said. Calm. Direct. Their expressions tightened slightly. You need to speak with administration, they replied. Another shield. Another delay. Another attempt to slow me down. But I was done moving slowly. Because now it was clear. They were not just hiding something. They were adjusting. In real time. And that meant I had triggered something deeper than they expected. Underscore. I left the building immediately. No point staying where answers were controlled. If Evelyn was moved suddenly, then Harold was next. I drove straight to his facility. Faster than before. Less careful. Because time was no longer on our side. When I arrived, something felt off immediately. More staff than usual. More movement. More tension. I walked inside without stopping. Harold's room. Door open. Empty. That was it. That was the moment everything escalated. I stepped inside anyway. The bed was made. Too neatly. Like no one had used it. But I knew he had. Just yesterday. There were no personal items. No signs of recent presence. Erased. Completely. They discharged him this morning. The voice came from behind me. I turned. A different staff member this time. Older. Less controlled. Discharged where? I asked. A pause. Then, I do not know. That was a lie. A weak one. And for the first time, I saw something else. Not just control. Fear. Real fear. Because whoever was giving these instructions was not just managing a situation. They were trying to contain it. Who authorized it? I asked. The staff member hesitated. Too long. Then quietly said, family request. There it was again. The same pattern. The same shield. But now it sounded different. Less confident. More fragile. Because the situation was moving too fast. Even for them. I stepped out of the room slowly, my mind racing. Both of them moved. Same morning. No notice. No records accessible. That was not coincidence. That was damage control. And that meant one thing. They were close to something. Or worse, they thought I was. I reached my car again, gripping the steering wheel tighter than before. Think. Move. Act. Then it hit me. The dates. The repeated ones inside Evelyn's book. I pulled it out quickly, flipping through pages. There. Same date. Marked 3 different times. Not random. Not emotional. Intentional. I checked the location written beside one of them. An address. Short. Abbreviated. But enough. I stared at it for a second. Then started the engine. The drive felt longer than it was. Because every second now mattered. If this place was connected to the proof, then it was not safe anymore. Not after what happened this morning. They were already moving pieces. Trying to stay ahead. I just had to reach it before they did. The address led me to a small property. Old. Quiet. Almost forgotten. Not the kind of place anyone would check first. Which made it perfect. I stepped out slowly, scanning the area. No visible activity. No movement. But something felt off. Too still. Like it had already been visited. I walked toward the door. Locked. Of course. I checked the windows. One of them slightly open. Not broken. Not forced. Opened carefully. Recently. That confirmed it. Someone had already been here. I moved inside cautiously. The air felt different. Disturbed. Drawers slightly open. Papers shifted. They had searched this place. But had they found what they were looking for? That was the question. And the answer came faster than I expected. Because as I stepped further inside, I noticed something they had missed. Something small. Hidden in plain sight. A loose floorboard. Barely noticeable. Unless you were looking for it. And I was. I crouched down slowly, lifting it just enough. And there it was. A sealed envelope. Untouched. Unopened. They had been here, but they had not found this. Not yet. I picked it up carefully, my pulse rising. Because whatever was inside this was the reason Evelyn wrote that message. The reason they were separated. The reason everything had escalated so fast. I stood there for a moment, holding the truth in my hands. And then I heard it. A car pulling up outside. Not slow. Not casual. Fast. Too fast. I froze. because that could only mean one thing. They knew. And this time, they were not going to let me walk away so easily. The sound of that car did not fade. It got louder, closer, and then it stopped right outside. No hesitation. No slow approach. Whoever it was, they were not guessing. They knew exactly where to come. My grip tightened around the envelope. For a second, I thought about opening it right there. But instinct stopped me. If they were already here, then whatever was inside this was more valuable than I realized. And opening it now would slow me down. I did not have time to read. I had time to move. Fast. I slid the envelope inside my jacket and stepped back from the loose floorboard, placing it exactly the way I found it. No signs. No trace. If I got out of this, they could not know what I took. The front door handle moved. Once. Then again. Locked. A pause followed. Then a harder push. They were not leaving. I looked around quickly. Back door. Half hidden behind a narrow hallway. I moved without making a sound. Every step controlled. Every breath shallow. The front door slammed open behind me. Wood hitting the wall. Heavy footsteps entered. More than one person. I did not turn back. Not yet. Because turning meant slowing down. And slowing down meant getting caught. I reached the back door and pushed it open just enough to slip through. Cool air hit my face. I stepped outside and closed it quietly behind me. No noise. No signal. Then I moved. Fast. Around the side of the house. Toward the trees lining the edge of the property. Behind me, voices started rising. They were here. Not a question. A statement. They knew. But they did not know how much. And that was my only advantage. I kept moving until I reached my car, parked just far enough to avoid immediate attention. I got in, started the engine, and pulled away without hesitation. No sudden acceleration. No panic. Just controlled movement. Because panic gets noticed. And right now, I needed to disappear. I did not stop driving for a long time. Not until the streets changed. Not until the tension in the air faded slightly. Only then did I finally pull over. My hands were steady. But inside, everything was moving faster than ever. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the envelope. Still sealed. Still untouched. This was it. The piece they had been searching for. The reason Evelyn prepared that message. The reason Harold said, "If this goes wrong, we lose everything." I opened it carefully. No tearing. No rushing. Inside, there were multiple documents. Not copies. Originals. Stamped. Signed. Dated. I scanned the first page. And everything stopped. Because what I was looking at was not just fraud. It was proof of a planned takeover. Not sudden. Not emotional. Planned. Over time. There were transaction records. Large sums. Moved in stages. Hidden through layers of accounts. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the signatures. Evelyn's name. Harold's name. Repeated. Across multiple documents. But now I knew what to look for. They were not real. They were replicated. Carefully. Consistently. And legally. That changed everything. Because this was no longer suspicion. This was evidence. Strong enough to break the entire structure they built. I flipped to the next page. Emails. Printed. Detailed. Conversations between family members. Not emotional. Strategic. One line stood out immediately. Once we have full control, separation will make it easier. There it was. Written. Clear. Undeniable. This was never about care. Never about safety. This was about control. Total. Complete. And planned long before anyone realized. I kept reading. Another line. Make sure the medical report supports cognitive decline. My jaw tightened. That report. The one that did not match reality. It was not a mistake. It was created to justify everything else. Every piece connected perfectly. Too perfectly. Because it was built that way. And then I reached the final document. A draft. And signed. But prepared. It outlined the next step. Asset liquidation. Selling properties. Closing accounts. Moving everything into a single controlled entity. Once that happened, there would be nothing left to recover. Nothing left to fight for. They were not just taking control. They were planning to erase ownership completely. And they were close. Too close. I lowered the papers slowly, my mind locking into one clear realization. This had to stop. Now. Not later. Not after more evidence. Now. Because if they completed the final step, even the truth would not be enough to reverse it. My phone vibrated again. Same unknown number. I stared at it for a second. Then answered. Silence. Then, you should not have gone there. The same voice. But different now. Less controlled. More direct. You are too late, they added. That sentence hit harder than expected. Too late. I glanced at the documents again. No, not yet. You missed something, I said. A pause. Long, heavy. And then, no, the voice replied. You did. The line went dead. And for the first time, doubt crept in. Not about the documents. Not about the truth. About timing. What did they mean? What had I missed? I looked through the papers again. Faster this time. More focused. And then I saw it. A date. Marked. Circled. Today. My chest tightened. Because beneath that date, there was a note. Final authorization to be completed once both are secured. Both. Not documents. Not accounts. Them. Evelyn and Harold. Secured. That was the missing piece. They were not just being separated. They were being prepared. For something final. Something irreversible. And whatever it was, it had not happened yet. But it was about to. I started the car again immediately. No hesitation this time. No caution. Because now the situation had changed. This was no longer about uncovering the truth. This was about reaching them before something permanent was done. Because if I failed now, then everything they had built over their entire lives would disappear. And worse, no one would ever be able to prove it happened. As I drove, one thought stayed locked in my mind. They said I was too late. But they were wrong. Because I was not too late. Not yet. But I was running out of time. And the next move would decide everything. That address on the document was not a home. Not a hospital. Not even a registered care facility. Which meant one thing. They were not being kept somewhere official anymore. They were being hidden. I drove faster than I should have. Every second now felt like something was slipping away. That word kept repeating in my mind. Secured. Not protected. Not cared for. Secured. Like objects. Like assets. Like something to be controlled until the final step was complete. The location was far from the city. Quiet roads. Fewer lights. Less traffic. Perfect for staying unnoticed. And that alone told me how serious this had become. Because moving them here meant they were no longer worried about appearances. They were moving toward the end. Underscore. When I reached the area, everything felt wrong. Too empty. Too still. A large building stood ahead. Old structure. Renovated just enough to function. But not enough to attract attention. No visible sign. No name. No reason for anyone to be there. Except the people who already knew about it. I parked at a distance. No direct approach. No noise. Because if they were already ahead of me, then walking in blindly would end everything before it even started. I stepped out slowly, keeping my movements controlled. Watching. Listening. Nothing obvious. But silence like this is never empty. It is controlled. I moved closer along the side, staying out of direct sight. One window. Dim light inside. I shifted slightly to get a better angle. And that was when I saw them. Evelyn. Sitting in a chair. Not restrained. But not free either. Harold. Across the room. Same condition. Separate. Even now. Even here. They had kept them apart. That confirmed everything. This was not temporary. This was methodical. And then I saw something else. Two people standing near a table. Papers spread out. One of them I recognized immediately. One of the children. The same calm face. The same controlled presence. But now, there was no mask. No softness. No explanation. Just focus. And urgency. I moved slightly closer, careful not to be seen. Their voices carried just enough. We finished this today. That line hit like a deadline. Not a plan. A deadline. Both signatures need to be confirmed, the other voice said. Confirmed. That meant they were still trying. Still forcing something through. But there was a problem. Evelyn and Harold had not signed anything willingly. And now they were here. Which meant they were about to be pushed further. Maybe through pressure. Maybe through manipulation. Or something worse. I felt my pulse rise. Because I was no longer early. I was barely on time. Underscore. I needed a way in. Quiet. Fast. No mistakes. The back of the building had a service entrance. Less secure. Less visible. I moved toward it, testing the handle slowly. Locked. Of course. But older locks are predictable. And right now, predictable was enough. It took a few seconds, not more. The door gave way quietly. I stepped inside. The air felt heavier, controlled, like the entire place was designed to keep people and not welcome them. Voices echoed faintly from the main room. Closer now. Clearer. I moved down the hallway, staying close to the wall. Every step measured. Every sound avoided. And then I reached the edge of the doorway. I could see everything now. Evelyn looked tired, but not broken. Her eyes still moved with awareness. Still watching. Still thinking. Harold looked different. Angrier. Less controlled. But still sharp. Still present. "They will sign," one of the children said. Confident. Certain. Like this was already done. "They do not have a choice." That sentence changed the air completely, because it removed the last illusion. This was no longer about convincing them. This was about forcing them. I felt something shift inside me. This had gone too far. Far beyond documents. Far beyond control. This was coercion. Clear. Direct. And illegal. But more than that, it was personal now. Because they were not just trying to take everything. They were trying to break them to do it. Underscore. I stepped forward. No more waiting. No more watching. "Then maybe you should ask them again." Every head turned instantly. Shock. Real shock. Because they did not expect me to get this far. Not here. Not now. The silence that followed was not calm. It was sharp. Unstable. "How did you?" They stopped mid-sentence. Because it did not matter anymore. I was already there. And I was not leaving. "You moved them without authorization," I said. Steady. Clear. "You forged documents." No denial. Not this time. Because now, there was no room left to pretend. "You should not have come," one of them said. That same tone again. Controlled. But cracking slightly at the edges. "I think I arrived exactly when I needed to," I replied. I took a step closer, holding their gaze. "You are done." That word landed differently. Not like a threat. Like a statement. Because now, I had everything. The documents. The proof. The message Evelyn left behind. And now, this moment. This final step. Caught before it could be completed. Underscore. But then something shifted again. One of them smiled. Not nervous. Not afraid. A slow, calculated smile. And that was when I realized something I had not considered. They were not panicking. Which meant they still had something left. Something I had not accounted for. "You think this ends here?" they said quietly. And before I could respond, another door opened behind me. Heavy footsteps. More people. I turned slightly. 2 more individuals entered. Not staff. Not family. Something else. Authority. Controlled. Prepared. And suddenly, the balance shifted. Because this was not just a confrontation anymore. This was escalation. Planned. Anticipated. And I had just walked directly into it. Underscore. I looked back at Evelyn and Harold for a brief second. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. This was not the final move. This was a trap. And I was already inside it. The only question now was, how far they were willing to go to make sure none of us walked out with the truth. And judging by everything I had seen so far, they were not going to stop here. Not even close. For a moment, no one moved. Not me. Not them. Not even the 2 people who had just stepped in behind me. The room held its breath. Then one of the newcomers spoke. "You need to step away from them." The tone was official. Controlled. Not loud. But final. I turned slowly, studying them. Not uniforms. Not exactly law enforcement. But close enough to carry authority. And that was when it clicked. This was not random. This was arranged. They expected interference. They prepared for it. And now, they were using it. "You were called here," I said quietly. Not a question. A realization. One of the family members smiled again. Slight. Cold. "We knew you would not stop," they said. "And we needed a witness." That sentence hit differently. A witness. Not to expose them. To validate them. I felt the shift instantly. They were not afraid of being caught. They were controlling what would be seen. And how it would be understood. "That is not going to work," I replied. calm, steady, because I already had more than they expected. I had proof, real proof, not staged, not manipulated. But then one of the authority figures stepped closer. "We have documentation," they said. And just like that, the ground shifted again. Because now it was not just their word. It was paperwork. Official. Recognized. Accepted without question. I looked at the table and saw something that made everything colder. New documents. Fresh. Prepared. Ready. And then I understood. They were not reacting to me. They had moved ahead. They were finishing this, with witnesses present. To make it look legitimate. To make it look complete. To make it impossible to challenge later. "They are being transferred under full legal authority," one of them continued. "Everything has been approved." That phrase again. But now it carried weight. Because now it came from someone outside the family. Someone positioned to make it real. I stepped forward. "No," I said. "Simple. Clear. This is built on forged signatures and false medical reports." Silence followed. But not the kind I expected. Not doubt. Not hesitation. Just calculation. Because they had already prepared for this response. "Do you have proof?" one of them asked. There it was. The moment everything depended on. I reached into my jacket slowly, every movement controlled, and placed the envelope on the table. "I do." The room shifted. Subtly, but completely. Because they did not expect that. Not here. Not now. One of them reached for the documents, flipping through them quickly. At first, their expression stayed neutral. Then it changed. Slightly. Almost invisible. But enough. They saw it. The transactions. The emails. The plan. The signatures. Everything. And for the first time, the control in the room cracked. Just a little. "This needs to be verified," they said. Not dismissal. Not denial. Verification. That was enough. Because verification means doubt. And doubt breaks control. But the family members stepped forward quickly. They were confused, they said. They did not understand what they signed. That same strategy again. Turn truth into confusion. Turn clarity into weakness. But this time, it did not land the same. Because now, there was something stronger on the table. Evidence. Real. Documented. Clear. "No," I said. They understood exactly what they were doing. I turned slightly toward Evelyn. "Tell them." The room shifted again. Because now, this was no longer just documents. This was voice. Evelyn looked up slowly. Her eyes moved across the room, taking everything in. Me. The documents. The people standing between her and Harold. And then she spoke. They lied. 2 words. Simple, but sharp enough to cut through everything. "They told us it was routine," she continued. "They took control step by step. No hesitation. No confusion. Clear. Present. Real. And that destroyed the medical report instantly. Because this was not someone unaware. This was someone fully conscious, fully capable, and fully aware of what was done to them." Harold leaned forward slightly. "They separated us so we could not compare what they were doing," he added. And just like that, the entire structure started collapsing. Because now it was not just paperwork. It was testimony. Direct. Consistent. And impossible to ignore. Underscore. The authority figures exchanged a brief look. Not long, but enough. Because now, this was no longer clean. No longer controlled. No longer simple. "This process is being paused," one of them said. And that sentence changed everything. Paused. Not completed. Not approved. Stopped. Right there. Right before the final step. And that was the break we needed. But the family member reacted instantly. "You cannot do that," they said. "This is already authorized." Their voice was sharper now. Less controlled. Because they felt it. Slipping. Piece by piece. "We said it is paused," came the response. Stronger this time. Final. And for the first time, they had no answer. Underscore. I exhaled slowly. Not relief. Not yet. Because this was not over. Not even close. This was just the moment where control shifted. From them to uncertainty. And uncertainty is where everything gets exposed. Underscore, 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 but then something unexpected happened. One of the authority figures looked directly at me. Where did you get these documents? They asked. The question landed heavier than expected, because now attention shifted. Toward me, toward how I got here, toward how much I knew. And suddenly, I understood something else. This was not just about proving the truth. This was about surviving the process of exposing it. Because if I could be discredited, then everything I brought would be questioned, doubted, delayed, and possibly buried again. I found what they tried to hide, I said. Careful, measured, not revealing everything. Not yet, because I still needed leverage. And I was not giving it away too easily. Underscore, 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 the room stayed tense. Balance between collapse and control. No one fully in charge anymore. And that is where things become dangerous. Because when control breaks, people act. Fast, desperate, unpredictable. Underscore, 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 I looked at Evelyn and Harold again. For the first time since all of this started, they were not completely alone. Not separated. Not silenced. Not controlled. But still not safe. Because this was not finished. This was just the moment everything became visible. And once things become visible, they either get resolved or they get buried deeper. And judging by everything I had seen so far, they were not the kind of people who gave up easily. Underscore, 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 as the room shifted into quiet discussion. One thought stayed locked in my mind. This was no longer just about stopping them. This was about exposing everything. Fully. Completely. In a way they could never rebuild from. Because if even one piece survived, they would try again. And next time, they would not make the same mistakes. Underscore, 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 the process had been paused. But the battle had just begun. And the next phase would not happen in silence. It would happen where everything gets decided, where truth is tested, where lies either hold or collapse completely. In court, the courtroom was quieter than I expected. Not empty, not calm, just controlled. The kind of silence where every word matters more than it should. I sat there, watching everything come together after weeks of pressure, movement, and near misses. Evelyn Mercer and Harold Mercer sat side by side this time. Not separated, not controlled, but still not fully free. Because this was the moment that would decide everything. Not just for them, for everything that had been taken from them. Across the room, their families sat in a line. Composed, well-dressed, carefully neutral, like none of this had anything to do with them. But I had seen behind that mask. And now, the court was about to see it too. Underscore, 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 the case began without drama. No raised voices. No sudden revelations. Just structure, order, process. But underneath that, everything was ready to break. The opposing side spoke first. Predictable. Controlled. They acted in the best interest of their parents, their lawyers said. That same narrative again. Care. Safety. Concern. Repeated until it sounded believable. They showed signs of decline. The lawyer continued. Decisions had to be made quickly. I watched Evelyn's hands tighten slightly. Not in fear. In restraint. Because she had heard this before. Over and over. And every time, it erased her voice. Underscore, 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 underscore. Then it was our turn. No rush. No aggression. Just truth. I stepped forward when called. Every step steady. Because this moment was not about emotion. It was about precision. You were present when the separation occurred? I was asked. Yes. And what did you observe? I paused for a fraction of a second. Not to think. To choose. They did not. Agree to it, I said. Simple. Clear. No extra words. Because truth does not need decoration. Underscore. The opposing lawyer moved quickly. Is it possible they forgot? They asked. There it was again. That same tactic. Turn clarity into confusion. Turn awareness into doubt. I met their gaze directly. No, I said. They understood exactly what was happening. Silence. Short, but heavy. Because certainty breaks strategy. Underscore. Then the documents were presented. The envelope. The records. The emails. Everything placed into the open. Not hidden. Not buried. Visible. Real. The courtroom shifted. Not loudly, but enough. Because once something becomes visible, it cannot return to silence. The financial records spoke first. Numbers do not lie easily. Large transfers. Unusual patterns. Timing that matched the legal changes. Too precise to ignore. Then came the emails. Read aloud. Word by word. Once we have full control, separation will make it easier. That line echoed through the room. Stronger here than anywhere else. Because here, it could not be dismissed. Here, it became evidence. I watched the family's expressions carefully. Still controlled. Still composed. But not untouched. Small changes. Small cracks. The kind that only show up under pressure. Then came the medical report. Presented as justification. As proof of decline. But this time, it did not stand alone. Because Evelyn was there. Present. Aware. Listening. She was called next. And the room shifted again. Because this was no longer interpretation. This was direct voice. Do you understand why you were placed in separate care homes? She was asked. Yes, she replied. No hesitation. And why was that? She looked forward. Not at the lawyer. Not at the judge. Straight ahead. Because they needed control, she said. The words landed clean. Sharp. Unshaken. Did you sign the documents willingly? Came the next question. No again. Clear. Certain. Not confused. Not uncertain. No room for reinterpretation. The opposing lawyer stepped in quickly. Is it possible you misunderstood what you signed? They asked. Evelyn turned slightly. Just enough. And for the first time, there was something stronger in her voice. They misunderstood what I would tolerate, she said. That changed everything. Because now, this was no longer defense. This was resistance. Harold was next. And his presence felt different. More direct. More forceful. They kept us apart so we could not compare what was happening, he said. They thought that would make it easier. The pattern. Spoken out loud. No longer hidden in documents. No longer buried in strategy. Clear. Visible. Undeniable. Then came the turning point. The signature analysis. An expert was called. Detailed, precise, unemotional. They compared the signatures across documents. Side by side. Measured. Examined. And then, these are not consistent with natural variation, the expert said. A pause. Then, they show signs of replication. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted completely. Because now, it was not just suspicion. Not just testimony. It was proof. Scientific. Objective. Final. Underscore. The courtroom changed. Not visibly, but completely. Because once that line was crossed, there was no going back. The judge leaned forward slightly, reviewing, processing, and then asked the question that ended everything. Was consent ever legitimately given? Silence followed. No quick answer. No confident response. Because now, there was none. The ruling did not come immediately, but it did not need to, because the outcome was already clear. The structure they built had collapsed. When the decision was finally spoken, it was simple, direct, final. All authority granted through these documents is revoked. Just like that. Control gone. Power removed. The entire foundation erased. I felt something shift inside me. Not relief. Not yet. Something quieter. Because this was not just a win. This was restoration. Evelyn and Harold sat still for a moment, not reacting immediately, because moments like this take time to settle, take time to become real. Then slowly, Evelyn reached for Harold's hand, and this time, no one stepped in, no one interrupted, no one separated them. Underscore. Across the room, the family sat in silence. No more control. No more calm explanations. Just stillness. Because everything they built had been exposed. Underscore. But as I stood there, watching it all come together, one thought stayed with me. This was not just about what they tried to take. It was about what they underestimated. They underestimated memory. They underestimated awareness. They underestimated resistance. And most of all, they underestimated what happens when the truth refuses to stay buried. Underscore. But the story was not over yet. Because now, Evelyn and Harold Mercer had something they did not have before. Not just their freedom. Not just their voice. Something stronger. Underscore. A choice. What to do next. And what they chose would not just change their lives. It would change everything around them. Freedom did not feel loud. It did not come with celebration. It came quietly, like something returning to where it always belonged. I watched as Evelyn Mercer and Harold Mercer stepped out of that courtroom together. No one guiding them. No one deciding for them. For the first time in months, every step they took was their own. And yet, they did not rush. They did not react the way most people would expect. Because when something is taken slowly and then returned suddenly, it takes time to trust it again. The days after the case were not easy. Freedom does not erase what happened. It exposes it. Every controlled moment, every forced decision, every silence, it all stays. And they felt it, but they did not let it define them. That was the difference. I visited them a few days later, not in a facility, not in a monitored space, but in a small house they had chosen themselves. Simple, quiet, enough. They sat together near the window, not speaking much, but not needing to, because some connections do not require words. You stayed, Evelyn said as I stepped inside. Not a question, a recognition. I nodded slightly. I said I would. Harold looked at me for a moment, then said something that stayed with me. They thought separating us would weaken us. A short pause. It showed us exactly who we needed to stop trusting. That was the shift. Not just survival. Clarity. Sharp. Permanent. But what happened next was something I did not expect. Because they did not stop at rebuilding their own life. They decided to do something bigger. Something that would make sure this could not happen again. Not to them. Not to anyone else. It started quietly. Small meetings. Private conversations. Talking to people who had gone through similar situations. And there were more than anyone realized. Families taking control. Documents signed under pressure. Elderly voices ignored. Stories buried because no one pushed back. Until now, Evelyn and Harold began gathering those stories. Not as complaints. As evidence. Patterns. Repeated again and again in different places. Different names. Same method. Control disguised as care. They turned their home into something more. Not an office. Not an institution. A place where people could speak without being interrupted. Without being dismissed. Without being told they were confused. I watched it grow. Slowly. Then faster. People started coming. Then more. Then even more. Not just for help. For validation. For someone to say, "You are not imagining this." Because that is where control begins. By making people doubt their own reality. But that control breaks the moment someone believes you. They worked with legal experts. People who understood the system. People who knew how these cases were built. And how they could be dismantled. Step by step. Case by case. The same strategies used against them were now being exposed. Documented. Challenged. In courtrooms. In hearings. In places where silence used to win. And slowly, something started changing. Not everywhere. Not all at once. But enough. Enough to make people notice. Enough to make families think twice. Enough to make systems question what they had been approving without looking deeper. One evening, I sat with them again. Same window. Same quiet. But something felt different. Lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because something had shifted. "We could have stopped after the case," I said. Evelyn nodded slightly. "Yes," she replied. Then added, "But then nothing would change." That was it. That was the reason. Not revenge. Not anger. Purpose. Clear. Focused. Unshaken. Harold leaned back slightly, looking out the window. "They thought they were taking our ending," he said. A brief pause. "They gave us a new beginning instead." And that was the truth. What started as control ended as exposure. What started as silence turned into voice. What started as separation became something stronger than before. But the most powerful part of their story was not what they survived. It was what they refused to let happen again. Because somewhere right now, someone else is sitting in a room, being told, "It is for your own good." Someone else is looking at a document that does not feel right. Someone else is being separated, slowly, quietly, carefully. And the difference between losing everything and taking it back comes down to one thing: seeing the truth before it is too late. I looked at them one last time before leaving, still sitting side by side, still choosing each moment for themselves. And I realized something simple. They did not just escape. They rebuilt. Stronger, clearer, unbreakable. And if their story reached even one person before it was too late, then everything they went through would mean something far greater than just survival. If you made it this far, there is one thing you need to remember. Not every decision made for you is truly for you. Question what feels wrong. Pay attention to what does not add up. And never ignore that quiet voice that tells you something is off. Because sometimes that voice is the only thing standing between you and losing everything. Subscribe now, because the next story might be one you cannot afford to ignore.